So game feel, instead of explaining it with too many words, I've got an example for us today. So I took this screen capture from a platformer. It was just like a tutorial on how to make one in Unity. And it basically has a character and like some platforms and physics, and it can be controlled with the keyboard. And here there's another one that I took from Twitter actually. And you guys can see it feels absolutely different. Like the character has these really nice animations, and the way it moves and it flows, it's so nice. Also the camera pans in a really nice way, and it just feels so different. And I think seeing it visually, it just makes it so clear what people making games talk about when they talk about game feel. So it's the same features, but it feels different. And I coined this term a while ago, which is interaction feel, and it's the application of this concept of game feel, but to everyday UIs. So this is not something new. I like to say interaction feel makes digital interactions more responsive, expressive, and emotionally satisfying. And I really like to say that it makes apps feel alive. So this is not a really new concept also in UIs. Actually, Apple has been doing it forever. I had to remember when I was doing this, preparing for the presentation, of when Steve Jobs presented the iPhone for the first time. And there were phones with big screens and tactile inputs before, but the way that software felt, I think it's what made the big difference. So here's actually Steve Jobs presenting.
How do I scroll through my list of artists? How do I do this? I just take my finger and I scroll.
People, it's just like, it was so new, like we give it for granted, but like, and it really made a difference, you know, like.
Isn't that cool? A little rubber banding up when I run off the edge.
All right, and I think it's also now, Apple keeps doing it, and now with the liquid glass, it's super obvious how much weight they put in interaction field. So I think it's also important that interaction field is not just design or motion or engineering. It's a mix of them, and I thought that's why it's so important to talk about this in this design engineering meetup. Okay, enough theory, and now it's just going to be demos of things that I've done. And I'll explain a bit how I made them, so I think that's going to be fun. So yeah, this is one of my prototypes. To give a bit of context, this was me prototyping music social network, and the idea was like that profiles would be these desktops, and people could collect stickers so they could make them their own and really show to visitors what do they like. So to the technical side, I use a lot of 3D. That's why I was asking who uses 3JS to make UIs. So in case that it's not obvious for someone that hasn't done something like this before, a lot of times you can just put UI on a plane. And that's basically how this works. Now going to the interaction, first I started with a plane, and I added the drag interaction. And this already is important. You need to put some love on it because, for example, having inertia, if you let it go, it should keep going for a bit. Otherwise, it just doesn't feel right. Okay, another concept, this is the last concept I promise, is wiggle bones. This is something I use all the time. And actually, I made the 3JS library for wiggle bones. It's not a concept that I invented. I learned from it from Blender that also has a plugin for it. But yeah, it's used in a lot of games. Anyway, the technique, what it does, it's the following. So when we have a skeleton and we have a hierarchy of bones, you have some bones that you can control programmatically or with a baked animation, and then other bones, which are called wiggle bones, just follow the first bone. So this one here is not animated, only the one at the root is being animated, and it creates this really physical feel. So here I added kind of a stick to these bones, and this is how it feels. Now going back to the stickers, here I made a small capture on how I did with this rig. So first I did a plane, I subdivided it, because of course you need vertices in order to have this deformation of the mesh. Then I added the root bone here, like kind of in the back, and then like 4 bones. And then you need to do something which is automatic weights. So that what it does, it assigns weights to each vertex, to each bone. So that's what I'm showing here. Then you can also use this function in Blender, which is called smooth. So it feels, it affects the vertices a bit less. This is more technical, but maybe I shouldn't, yeah. Let's keep going. Also, otherwise it's going to take too long. Then I use my Wiggle Bones library to bring it into Three.js, and that's how it's feeling already. Then I added a lot of them, and then there's this typical problem from like working with real-time graphics, which is called z-fighting. And the problem is if you have different things at the same distance from the camera, like the pipeline doesn't know what's in front, and it creates that ugly effect. So what I did later is I put them all in an array, and depending on their position on the array, I brought them closer to the camera. So they're never at the same distance. And then when you drag one, even if it's in the back, it puts it at the top of the array, so it always lands at the top. So that got fixed, and I think here I show at some point how I pick this one in the back, and then it comes to the top. So that was starting to feel closer. Then I had this other problem, which was you could drop stuff behind the cart in the middle. And I wanted to solve it in a really natural way that didn't need any explanation. So I just added this force that just pushes them away so you can never lose them. And that was pretty much it for the interaction. Then I just added textures with transparent, so because they have transparency, they look like they have this shape. And I added, this is just like the shadows from Three.js. And it has a small gradient, just like some details to make it look nice. And that's it for this one. Then I wanted to show this demo because it's quite the same technique. I made this website for Amy. Maybe you've seen it. The concept here was that we wanted to explain a full day of using Amy. And to do that, we were showing this sky, and we put a lot of love into trying to make the sky look like morning, then noon, and then night. That's why there's so much sky. And we wanted to add the logo in a really fun way. So we added the logo as balloons. So you can see here it's pretty much the same that I showed before. I just modeled the balloon in Blender, and then I did this rig that looks pretty much the same. Something that I did different was the interaction, because it didn't make sense, or we thought it's a bit out of context that you could just drag the balloons. We made this kind of magnetic field effect, so when the mouse gets close to the balloons, it attracts them, and then like you can play with them when you're close to that area. And then when the mouse leaves that area, they just go back to the center. It just gives like this really tactile effect. And I wanted to show an example. I think I didn't show this before, and I think it's quite fun. Another thing that a lot of people does with 3D when they start making websites or experiences, more non-game products, it's a configurator. And I feel like a lot of them, they're kind of missing on interaction feel. This is a really cool project actually for Cadillac in a dealership. They were doing like this flagship dealership, and they wanted to have an area for the kids to play while the parents were buying. And I think there was even some studies that would increase sales. Whatever. we were doing this fun configurator for the cars. So instead of having the camera be the one orbiting around the objects, I thought, what if we put the car in a platform? This can make the car much more interactive and like have this feeling that you're actually touching this world that we're creating. So in this case, I didn't use wiggle bones. I wanted to show an example without wiggle bones. So again, a bit technical, but I think this is fun. This is something I learned from games also. from some car games. So basically, I used Canon.js, and what I did here is I put the yellow particles, they're called, they're attached to the platform. And I thought this would loop, but I'll play it again in a second. So those ones are pulling the whole thing. And then what I did, it's like there's the gravity pushing down the body, and then you apply on each frame a force on each of the blue points pushing up. So you have the gravity pushing down, and then this force is pushing up. Combined with these springs pulling from each side, it creates this crazy, really wobbly effect. I'm just going to play it again. And then we were like, okay, what if instead of like changing the color from like a set of colors, what if actually the kids could paint it? And then we created like this spray, and it's so satisfying to be able indeed to interact with the object, and I think it works so well also with the physics, because it really feels like you're touching it. And then we're like, what if we go even even crazier, and we did this prototype also, these balls. And yeah, I didn't go super in detail with technical stuff, but I kept this closing line. So a lot of, I think, interaction feel is about tweaking, and like as I was showing before, even if it's the same features, it feels different. And that's a lot about just tweaking parameters, trying things, seeing how it feels. And a lot of times we are not sure if it's worth it, but I'm pretty sure it does, and users can definitely feel it. And that's about it. I don't know about the time, but thank you very much.
What's your flow like going from Blender into 3JS? Like, I saw you were making a lot of assets in Blender, prototyping stuff out in Blender, but like, how do you get from there to 3JS?
So technically, it's just the GLTF exporter, which works pretty well. But indeed, like, I have my folder structure where first maybe I like to have in my Blender like pre-visualizations of how it's going to look, and then also the final assets. And the final assets, they change depending on the interaction. What I was showing before about the stickers, the first time I do the weight painting, maybe I try it and like it falls too much. So yeah, definitely I have different versions. I have it in different collections. And actually in the GLTF exporter, you have an option to only export the active collection. So I definitely have different versions. And recently I've started even using different scenes. So in the same file, I have different assets for the same project. I don't know if that explains enough.
Yeah, I was wondering, I saw in the car example where you have the dots with the forces. I'm curious, for someone like you who's been doing this type of stuff for a long time, are you able to develop an intuition where you're like, okay, yeah, if I put these forces here, this is going to happen? Or is it still a lot of just trying things and see what happens?
Honestly, it feels quite like shit at the beginning. Like you start something and it's like, it's not working. And I'm like, thank God I read that someone else has done it. And this must be the way. And I'm sure I've also found out some other things that other people has learned, but like there's a lot of, and indeed about physics, there's not that much people talking about it. Like maybe people in games, but like, it's like someone says, oh yeah, this came indeed like from a game, like kind of stylized animations, because also you have like Formula 1 games. I don't think those are gonna use this fake physics, but they were just explaining like this idea of the gravity going down and then pushing up. And then, but yeah, the values at the beginning, they don't work. So you just like really need to tweak a lot.
Great presentation. I was going to say one of my favorite kind of game build concepts is Coyote Time. You kind of have the Mega Man animation there, and like in platformers, when you go to jump off an edge, but it's Coyote Time that stops them from dropping off the edge. And it's one of those things we take for granted in like video games, especially platformers. I wanted to ask you, what is the interaction feel version of that, where it's something we take for granted every day, but we're using it every day? Maybe it's an interaction that exists in products we use or in operating systems we use.
I think dragging is a good one. In my mind, there's interactions that are stronger for interaction field and some that are less. And it has to do with how expressive you can be. For example, a click, it's like a trigger in a coordinate, whereas dragging or like you could, or even painting, like you can leave a trail, and dragging is quite, it's one that appears a lot in everyday user interfaces, but it has so many details. Actually, he's gonna talk about this for a bit.